welcome back, La Liga fans. This is the Total Football Analysis La Liga podcast. I'm your host, professional soccer player Alex Comcia. Excited to once again be joined by El Profesor Chris Mumford. How are you doing, Chris?
Fabuloso.
And of course, our expert analyst, Scott Martin. How you doing, Scott?
Oh man, recovering from that crazy weekend in La Liga and really Europe as a whole.
Definitely. There was a lot of drama this past week, as you mentioned, Scott. Who would have predicted Real Madrid, Sevilla, and FC Barcelona would drop points and all take L's from Cadiz, Granada, and Getafe? This shot Real Sociedad and Villarreal up to the number 1 and 2 spots, but of course, we're still in early days, and they do have a game in hand on some other teams. Luis Suarez is looking like he's enjoying life once again in the capital, playing for Atletico Madrid. He got himself on the score sheet once again. And gentlemen, Spanish football is heating up, and it seems to be quite competitive as just 1 point separates first place Real Sociedad from sixth place Granada. Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, and Sevilla find themselves in 8th, 9th, and 10th place respectively. Chris, Scott, are these early signs of a more competitive season than in previous years?
I want to believe that to be. I'm praying to the soccer gods that that's the case, because we're seeing it across several leagues, right? We're seeing that in Serie A, we're seeing that in the Premier League. There's no hope for Ligue 1, but in terms of the others, yeah. And it's just the mojo is bonkers right now. What is going on? So yeah, I'm excited because you know me, I'm a big fan. Parity, and that doesn't exist most of the time.
Yeah, and when you look across the big leagues, most of the major teams were playing in the Champions League just a couple months ago. So they had to take that late vacation, and then they had that shortened preseason. So you could make the case that they're at a little bit of a disadvantage, or I guess maybe the playing fields are level now. So we've seen some surprising results, and 3 of them right away in La Liga this weekend. Holy smokes!
Definitely. And one of the great stories here is Real Sociedad taking that number 1 spot. I'm not sure if we could have predicted this. They're obviously a very good team. But, number 1, that's significant. And, they've played 6 matches. So, again, early days. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. But, Chris, what's so impressive about Real Sociedad here? Are they legitimate contenders for top 4 in Champions League?
I desperately want them to be. I think, as you said, it's a little bit too early. They had a signature when they beat Getafe 3-0. I think there's something to be said about going 0-0 against Real Madrid. I think there's some nice pieces there, but you think about against these other teams, Betis, which has been on a nicer run, they're probably going to regress back to the mean. What I can't get over, Scott, is how did they lose against Valencia 1-0?
This is the team that you pinned to go down this season, Valencia. So that was a surprising game. Watching that one, I felt like Real Sociedad really should have come away with the result. And they'll probably end up kicking themselves late in the season when they think back, no loss. But look at this side. I mean, it's a really nice mix of veteran leadership with David Silva, Nacho Monreal, and then you've got a lot of really young talent. So, we're still yet to see Alexander Isaac really hit his stride this season, but Oyarzabal has been great for them on the left. Mikel Moreno is one of the best 8s you're going to find in La Liga. And, they've got a nice mix of players they can use on the right side, especially, Portu this past weekend and Januzaj when they need someone who's a little bit more direct. So this is a team that has some nice depth. Aguasil's done a brilliant job with this group, and you know they might just have enough to beat out one of those top four teams in La Liga. So they were very close going into the COVID break. There was no better team in La Liga than Real Sociedad, and I think they had climbed as high as third before the break. So granted, they've lost Odegaard, but this is a team that can make a run. They've got talent. They've got a great coach.
Sociedad fans definitely have a lot to be excited about, Scott. Now let's switch gears to our first upset of the week. Granada beat Sevilla 1-0. The red card against João Jordan was obviously significant, but is there anything that stood out for you, Scott?
So that red card really did doom them in the game. I think in the first half they had something like 68% possession. It was setting up just to be a classic Sevilla performance, just a lot of possession, dominating the wings, and little success to that point with their crossing, but you could see they were picking up. So Granada had set up in just a lower block, looked to counterattack. They had some success in the first half, but I just had this feeling that Sevilla really had them right where they wanted. But then Juan Jordan picks up the two yellow cards within a minute of each other. Just stupid, totally needless fouls. And, the tables turns. So I think for the game, Sevilla had 48% possession. And when you look at what they managed last season or what they managed in the first half of this match, it forced them to totally disregard their playing philosophy, and they really just never had a chance in that second half. And Granada, to their credit, they really piled up the pressure and came away with the deserved win.
Do you think it was a mistake not to start Luke de Jong up top as a number 9?
Yeah, so, you could definitely see with the top four teams, in anticipation of the Champions League games, that there was some rotation. In hindsight, sure, yeah, you're going to have more success in the crosses. And especially when you look at Granada, they're pretty good at defending crosses as well. They've got Domingos Duarte, who's recently had his call up to the Portuguese national team. So he's really an up-and-coming player, really starting to hit his stride at the midpoint in his career. But yeah, I think De Jong gives him that little bit of an extra edge. But, I think when you look at the top four teams, I think each coach went into the matchup.
I would look at Sevilla. I know that they got the knock that they got, but they're pretty healthy, right? They've only got 2 people on that are injured, and if you look at their schedule coming up, you look at Chelsea 2 times, more or less in the next month. That's going to be a lot. But you think about their home fixtures or home league fixtures, or Eibar Athletic Club, Osasuna, and Celta Vigo. It's really, and then Huesca. And they're not really going to have some heavier talent that they're going to be competing against until December 6th against Real Madrid. So I would say that the scheduling gods were kind to Sevilla for this time. So I think they're going to go on a nice little run. And while as yet some of their top 3 or 4 competitors are going to have some real work ahead of them in the coming month or so.
Alex, let me ask you, as a player, if you do get that nice run of games, that help from the league with the scheduling, and you're able to build up some momentum, what kind of psychological advantage does that have going into these matches against top teams?
It's interesting because if you're a player, and I've said this before, you ideally approach every game similarly in your mindset.
Ideally.
Now at the top level, I don't think that happens necessarily as much. I think with their schedule, they will, as Chris was saying, they will be looking at it and saying, this isn't terrible. This isn't so bad. There are games where we can slip up here. Obviously, the Chelsea game is going to be massive. The 2 games are going to be massive as well. But in La Liga, they can really go on a run here. This is one slip up, and I think they'll be kicking themselves significantly at this slip up because this is where their competitors in Real Madrid and Barcelona slipped up. So as a player, I'm thinking, Barcelona and Real Madrid haven't seemed to be at their best. We got a really good squad. We've won the Europa League. We have a lot of talent that we brought back from last year. Plus, we've added Rakitic, and I mentioned this last week. I still think that's a big, big addition that hasn't yet, really flourished and showed what he can do for this Sevilla side. I think it's a massive booster from a player's mentality. And yeah, again, they'll approach it as one game at a time, but knowing that if they can get on that good 2-3 game win streak, they can really do some damage this year. So moving on now to the Celta Vigo Atletico Madrid game, where Atletico Madrid won 2-0. The fun thing for us to discuss will be the two bullies up top in Costa and Suarez. Scott, I know we mentioned there's some evil energy in there, and it seems to cause problems from the other team's defense.
Yeah, and the big thing for me, when you look at the timing, when the starting lineups were released, it's right about the time Sevilla gave up their goal against Granada. Barcelona and Real Madrid followed with shocking losses. And then, in the EPL, if you want to extend that far, you've got the two big Liverpool injuries. So, I'm not saying Costa and Suarez caused all this chaos in the universe, but I'm not saying they didn't.
Yeah. I think that's significant.
So,
Chris,
yeah, just way too much chaos in one day. But, Chris, this is exactly what I wanted. You've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Well, it's just nice if you're going to have to fight evil, it's nice that they're all on one Death Star, right? And so what I can't get over is, Celta Vigo played their game. They had a majority of possession, which is not a surprise. 45% was Atletico Madrid. Expected goals of 1.8 for Celta Vigo versus 1.4 for Atletico Madrid. And you had 14 shots, Celta Vigo, 5 on target. Atletico Madrid, your typical anemic 9 shots, total 4 on goal, but 2 of them score. Go figure, right? And I got to tell you, both of those goals were very easy on the eye. Some really intricate touches. And I just think that João Felix those strikers got to be happy that they got a guy serving them up like that. It's going to make their so-called retirement or years, sunset years, a whole lot funner. Scott, what did you think about those combos?
The Joao Felix goal in the second half, right at the end of the game, that was really pretty. So, picks up the foul, restarts play quickly, flicks it beyond the Granada defense, gets the ball back, beats a defender, and then hammers the ball at the back post. So really unlucky not to get a goal. It's one of those where if he does score, start talking like, is this in the Puskas Awards shortlist? Like, it was that nice a goal. So, but yeah, you look at the overall course of the game. I think this is why Atletico Madrid they needed someone who could finish off their play from wide, and he's very creative, very clever in the box. So, right away they're reaping in the and you just get the sense that as this year progresses, if Costa and Suarez can manage the top, mix in underneath them, this could be a pretty lethal season for the two forwards.
Right, and I'm just thinking of it as a defender. From a defender's perspective, I'm playing against this Atletico Madrid side. And, immediately my mentality goes, okay, Costa, Suarez are starting up top. It's going to be a really physical matchup. We're going to have to be touch tight, but not too tight to the point where they can just spin us. We're going to have excellent cover from the weak side center back and the other side fullback, as well, because we're going to do a lot of stepping, because we do not want these guys turning, because they will shoot, and they can shoot very, very well. Now you get into that mentality for 60 minutes, and then they sub on a guy like João Felix, like Carrasco, like Llorente, players that are completely different in style compared to these two strikers up top. It gives this whole different dimension to this Atletico Madrid side, to where I'm getting caught in the mentality of, you know, getting really physical with these two strikers that are more than capable of, you know, technically outdoing you. I have to switch my mentality as a defender if they're going to bring up Felix or Carrasco really up high, because if I get too tight, I'm going to get spun and done. So like I said, really, really exciting days for Atletico Madrid, not just in their starting two or one, whoever's up top, but in the substitutions that are going to continue to make in that area.
I do want to bring up one point, though, is Oblak was the man of the match. He had
Exactly.
5 saves. And, you know, if he does only half as good of a job as he did, you know, then we're talking about a tied match or a 3-2 loss. So very, very nice for, you know, for let's pay attention to the drama up front. But Oblak is taking care of business in the back, where there were, you know, there's a lot of work by the defenders, and Oblak was able to sweep up.
Yeah, were you guys watching that game? Were you surprised by how open it was? I mean, typically when you watch Atletico Madrid, they keep it pretty tight at the back, but you know, especially the shoulders of the two center backs, it seemed like there was a lot of space.
Yeah, it was uncharacteristic. I do not expect that to happen, you know, in the next few games for Atletico, especially in this next game coming up. I really expect them to start locking it down more. I think they're maybe, like you said, they're playing too much on their, you know, attacking ability. And maybe honestly they're playing too much on Oblak's ability, Chris. So on the extremes there on both sides, and they're not having that same, you know, compact line we're so used to within the last few years. I think that needs to get, you know, sorted out in training right away, because if they can add that another dimension, which is very characteristic of who they are as a team, to this already exceptionally talented side, I think it makes them a legitimate title contender.
I got to tell you, I'm going to be really curious to see what Simeone does, because I think if you got the talent up high, you go ahead and use it. And I just feel like there's plenty of creativity. You more or less have 2 great one-touch finishers, right? I mean, it's like, have at it. Let's go to town on this, and maybe we loosen things up. Because you're seeing Pep modify his tactics a little bit. You're seeing Klopp do the same thing. Is it time for Diego Simeone to maybe start recognizing the talent you have and maybe adjusting for that? I don't know. I know that sounds almost like heresy for the Athletic fans, but you know, Simeone might be getting a little bored with things a little bit, right? And just change things up. So time will tell on that front.
So Scott, we obviously talked about Thomas Partey parting, you know, this team. Lucas Torreira comes into the lineup. Do you think he's a player that's going to be successful in this Atletico Madrid squad?
He better. I mean, if he doesn't, this side will continue to show that leaky quality. So when you look at the way Atletico played last year, Partey was the midfield destroyer. He gave that back line so much coverage that they could afford to be a little bit more aggressive on the wings, especially on that left-hand side with Renan Lodi, who is another guy that we need to eventually have a conversation about if the performances don't pick up. But, you know, looking at the middle of the pitch, you know, we talked about it last week. Don't think they have any one player who can single-handedly replace Partey. But, you know, they have Oblak. They have Jimenez, who's one of the best center backs in the world. So if they can keep 2 guys, 2 center midfielders, just in front of those 2 center backs, give them that nice little square rest defense as they progress up the pitch. Why not take some chances? Why not have some fun? So, they've got the attacking talent. We're going to see Simeone break away from his 4-4-2 or his very rigid style of play. You would almost think with these late adjustments to the roster and adding Suarez, this would be a great time.
I want to jump in. We do need to put a little asterisk by they do have some injuries, right? I mean, they've got Jimenez, Saul, love them or not. We've got Lodi as well. Diego Costa just went on the injured list. So they're going to have a little bit of work ahead of them in terms of managing that, while as yet folks we've talked about so far haven't had to confront those issues as much. And the folks they're going to play, obviously, is they're going to have to play that team called Bayern Munich, right? I understand they're pretty good ball players, right? They're going to have Betis, RB Salzburg, which is always a tough out, Osasuna, and then they're playing Lokomotiv Moscow, Cadiz, and then they have Barcelona on November 22nd. So again, it seems like they've got a little bit of respite in the domestic league, but they're going to have their hands full when it comes to Champions League in the upcoming weeks.
Definitely. The second upset was Real Madrid falling to Cadiz 0-1. That first, Ramos is a talking point here, definitely, as he usually is with us. Now how he started the game was exceptional. He had that goal line clearance against Negredo, unreal. One of those highlight videos that gets you going as a defender. It certainly got me going. But then if you look at that goal they gave up, I really believe that it was actually Ramos's error that led to the Anthony Lozano goal. Ramos doesn't drop with the initial runner when he sees that the ball is getting played long. Varane drops, so half the line drops, half the line doesn't with Ramos, and I believe Marcelo, who didn't really drop as well. And then that allows, yeah, exactly. And then that allows Lozano to get in behind Ramos' space, and from that point on, he's chasing his own goal. Later on, he got injured, so that's an area of concern potentially for Real Madrid. At halftime, I thought the decision to play Lucas Vazquez was debatable. I'm not sure. Zidane made a ton of substitutions in the game, as you'll definitely talk about, Scott, but is this a game where Zidane got it wrong?
Oh, yeah. This was a pretty classic trap game. And, I mean, look at all these games prior to the Champions. And, we talked last week, this Cadiz side, they're very strong defensively. They will be very direct when they attack. They do have a very good counterattack. And, quite frankly, by the time they got that goal in the 16th minute, they had 5 or 6 great opportunities by then. I mean, this game could have been over in Cadiz's favor within 16 minutes. I was shocked. So, they're a good side, but yeah. I think that just goes to show how big an issue Zidane had with his starting 11. So, on the goal that Cadiz did score, you do have Ramos stepping into the midfield, but who's missing? Casemiro. And in his place, you've got 3 attack-first players in the midfield. So they weren't prepared to defend against counterattacks. When the center backs needed some help, 10 yards in front of them, there was no one there. If you look at the average starting positions for this Real Madrid midfield, the starting positions from the center backs to Kroos and Modric is almost 20 yards. And then you factor in where Casemiro's average starting position was when he came in. It was about 10 yards from the center backs. So that's a massive difference. And, if you're going to have Kroos and Modric as your 2 deep players, you're you're going to pay because neither of them is great defensively. Kroos is good when he's paired up with Casemiro, has to patrol 20 yards with. So Casemiro makes his defensive work a little bit easier. So I think they really got it wrong in the midfield. And it's no surprise that Zidane made 4 halftime substitutions. But then the other area, I thought he really got it wrong at right back. So Nacho went up and down the field all match, which I don't understand. He's not proficient in the attack. I don't know why he wasn't more of a stay-at-home center back. And then you get Marcelo situated higher up the pitch. But then why have Nacho and Vasquez on the same side? Effectively killed your attack on that right-hand side. And I think when you look at their XG from the 3 vertical thirds of the pitch, it's like 0.1 or 0.01 from the right-hand side. So they had no attacking threat there. So that allowed Cadiz to just slide everybody to the left, try and overload, deny space to Vinicius Jr. and Marcelo, and it worked. And then they could counterattack behind Marcelo. So, yeah, I mean, tactics were totally wrong. It almost seemed like this was just a way to rotate the squad, try and keep everybody happy, give guys like Nacho and Lucas Vasquez some minutes, because they are good club people, but cost them 3 points.
So I got to tell you, this is kind of a questions will be asked, and maybe this is just a nominally here, right? I mean, how does a team possess 75% of the time and take 14 shots, only of which 1 is on target, right? And then the other team takes 12 shots, of which 5 are on target. You would think I'd be saying the 5 shots on target were done by Real Madrid, but no, it's the 1 shot on target by Real Madrid. And you're telling me that they have weakness on the right side, the first and second string defense. That is worrisome to me, especially in light of the fact that you want to talk about how fairly easy it is for the other teams. These guys have Shakhtar coming up shortly. Probably not a huge, difficult match, but they have that team called Barcelona coming up on Saturday. And then they got Mönchengladbach right after that. And then they're going to have Inter Milan after that. And then they've got Valencia, Villarreal. And then they've got Inter again. And then they kind of have a sigh of breath in Alaves. But I'm just talking about November. I'm talking about the next, 4 weeks or so, or 5 weeks, where they're going to have a lot of work ahead of them. And they've got a clearly defined weakness, and they're not firing on all cylinders offensively. Is it that the team's getting a year older? Why is the mojo off here?
Yeah, I really want to go back to Scott's point about Casemiro. I don't understand what the uncertainty is about him. So maybe I'm missing something, because if I'm thinking about it from a defensive perspective, you look at a player players like Varane and Ramos who love to be aggressive on the step, and we've talked about that before. That really makes Real Madrid, and that makes them so hard to play against, because they really just eat up space in the middle of the park, where the typical creative players love to roam around, and they become super uncomfortable. Now, this game makes it so clear, and I'm repeating basically what you said, Scott, that Casemiro is so key to this side, because he covers that space, and that goal against is exactly the example of how to break down this Real Madrid defense if Casemiro is not in the side. So we definitely have to give credit to Cadiz in this game. I think this is a blueprint for a lot of teams, not only in La Liga, but maybe in Champions League to look at as well. Mind you, 1 shot on target, like Chris said, that will turn up quite a lot in the next few games. I don't expect that to stay at all. But for me, it's, what are we even debating here? I think Casemiro was, even a year ago, maybe a few months ago, was this team's best player. Him and Ramos at one point. Even before the quarantine and coronavirus happened, I would argue that Casemiro was their most valuable player. I don't know about best player, but most valuable to how this side wants to play. So for
Yeah,
me, Chris, it's that simple. This guy needs to be in the lineup, and he needs to be given 100% backing again by the manager. I don't know what are the details or what's been happening between him and Zidane, but it just seems like there was that the earlier game in the year where he didn't start, and I don't know, he made a mistake at the end of last year where he gave up the ball and then the other team scored. I forgot who that was against as well, but I don't know. For me, he's the key to this team.
yeah, this is going to sound like heresy, but I would argue that he's been their most important player for 3 years, and that includes Cristiano's last year at Real Madrid. So he just gives so much security to that defense that it just frees up everybody to play. So in this game, like if you're not going to start Casemiro, why not Valverde? That's my other question. I don't know why you have two players as your two deep lying playmakers. You don't need that. It's redundant, especially when you have Ramos back there as well. Casemiro is just so valuable to this roster. He has to be in there. Cruz looks like he's the best eight to play with him. And then for me, it's just a matter of finding the best right center midfielder. So if that's Modric, Valverde, and you know what? Right now, I think it is Valverde because they have nothing on the right hand side with Carvajal and Odriozola out. And then you look at, Lucas Vasquez hasn't been effective. Rodrigo is such a streaky player. I think you need something more on that right-hand side. So whether you play Valverde as a right forward or maybe have him as that right side midfield to then overlap a player like, Isco or Rodrigo, I think that's their best bet. But they have to fix this right-hand side
Right.
sooner rather than later.
I think something that's interesting too is Barcelona and Real Madrid are both struggling to define who their front three is.
Yeah.
I think that's a big point for me as well. Is I don't know, besides Benzema, who is Real Madrid's front three. They're struggling with that identity. Barcelona, who we're going to get into in a minute, is also struggling with that identity as well. And when things get too fluid at a certain point and there's no stability and there's no structure, it becomes a little chaotic. And I think we're seeing that balance between the chaos and order within the creative side of the front three has been a challenge for Madrid and Barcelona this season.
Well, let me cheer you up, Scott. Let me tell the positive narrative here. Odriozola is scheduled to come back in the next few days. Could be back in the lineup by the weekend. And then there's that guy Hazard that's supposed to be scheduled to kind of come back at the end of the month. That's what my sources tell me. I don't I don't know if that's going to be the Chelsea Hazard or the Real Madrid Hazard, right? And I'm hoping for the league more, as much as for Real Madrid, that the Hazard of old comes back. So I do think, to kind of get to your point, Alex, defining that front three, a healthy Hazard is going to be able to really light things up a little bit. And so let's kind of see where that goes. And we're talking about 10 days, and he's not going to immediately light the world on fire. Give him a 2 or 3 week runway, just like Aguero looked solid out there for Man City. But you got to give these superstars a little runway to kind of get back to where they are, with fingers crossed.
Good point. The last upset of the weekend, or the last upset for the big teams, was Getafe beating Barcelona by a score of 1-0. And Scott, I thought you did a great job last week of previewing how this match would look, as well as going into the details of how Getafe played. I think it was a lot of what we expected. The only good news here for Barcelona is that, in my opinion, they win the award for the ugliest kit combination in La Liga so far this year.
Oh, hands down.
Hands down, hated the green. I don't mind the pink jerseys. I think those are nice. I'm talking about the green socks and shorts. Those are off for me. Yeah, but maybe they're into the bright colors. It didn't work out this time. Good news for American fans at home. Sergio Dest started at that left back position. I believe his best position though is at that right back spot, if I'm not mistaken. Um, he looked decent. Agree. It's a lot of the same though of what we're seeing from Barcelona in terms of last year in this particular game. This game reminded me completely of how they played in some of their not so great times in that last season. There were questionable decisions from Koeman. Um, that De Jong foul against Gene, I'd love to get your guys' take on that because I just don't know if I can definitively say if that's a foul or not because De Jong looks like he's standing him up and Gene kind of backs up into him and falls. And then I'm thinking to myself, in the middle of the field, that would probably be a foul. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a foul just because we do see him lunge in a little bit with that foot and and catch Gine's foot as well. So yeah, for a penalty kick, I agree, definitely a little bit on the softer side, but I think it is one that's pretty consistently given. So, Chris, what are your thoughts?
Um, I think it was soft, but within the realm of reason. So, unfortunately, life is unfair sometimes.
Yeah, like you said, Chris, life isn't fair, and the stats, were definitely in favor of Barcelona. This game reminded me of that Cadiz Real Madrid game in terms of statistics, where Barcelona, you look at the stats, you without looking at the scoreline, you would think that this is a 3-0 game. No problem. They had 73% possession. They had, some decent amount of chances created, 6 to Getafe's, 5, but their big chances were only at 1. Getafe really did a great job of making this game just physical and tough. Messi was not at his best, although he did hit the post, which was quite close. I thought the bright spot was Pedri, the 17-year-old who was running out of the midfield. He looks really, really good. A talent to, hopefully progress in this Barcelona system. Hopefully it's, going to continue. I don't expect him to have that starting spot going forward. But I look back here and I think about, Ronald Koeman's decisions of, how is he using Coutinho on the bench, coming off the bench? Pjanic is still not seeing the pitch. Um, I am a big fan of Trincao. I think he could add. I've mentioned this before. I think he could add a lot to this Barcelona front three. Like I said earlier, Scott, we still don't know who this front three is, and man, I'm just so so sad for Griezmann again. Like he had that sitter put in through on goal. He can make it a game and he skies it, and you can just see the way he puts his hand on his head and he's cursing to the gods like what I got to do to get a good performance, a good goal here. He's really struggling, and it's hard as a player when you're just not in the right frame of mind. I'm definitely not a goal scorer, but I can imagine when things aren't going your way, that's bad momentum too. We spoke about the good momentum with hopefully the Sevilla side doing better. That's personal bad momentum, and it's tough because Koeman doesn't want to take him out of the lineup because that's going to really put a nail in his coffin and he might not come back better. But maybe that's what needs to happen to make this Barcelona side better. Because in my opinion, Coutinho has to start. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on the front three and who that needs to be, but it's a lot of chaos and confusion there too.
Yeah, I think Griezmann does need a little bit of a breather, if only for the psychological perspective. No reason he should have missed that opportunity. But I think it's just the weight of the crest. So, he has been a little bit of the scapegoat during his time at Barcelona, with passing, poor performance, or each missed opportunity. That weight just gets a little bit heavier. So, yeah, I mean, from his perspective, um, it's almost darned if you don't, darned if you do. If you keep him in the lineup. So, why not give him a little bit of a breather? And I think actually for this Champions League game, it's happening as we record now. I think it's Messi who's up top with Coutinho under Trincao on the right, Fati on the left. So I think, Alex, I mean, sounds like that's the we'll say front four that you're really.
Yes, absolutely. That's the front four that I've been wanting since I've started watching the beginning of this season. I'm also still very excited about Ricky Pooge. I don't think, he's necessarily gotten that many opportunities. I thought he was excellent, especially in that later half of the season. I don't know. I'm losing, but Pedri came in and did his job well. You can't have Pooge, De Jong, and Pedri in the midfield. That just can't happen for the sake of their defensive part of the game. I don't know how Pjanic looks, and I've already mentioned this in this team. I just don't see Koeman taking out Busquets and putting on a guy like Pjanic anytime soon, although maybe that's what the team might need. I'd be curious to get your thoughts too, Chris, on Neto coming in goal. Obviously, we don't have the luxury of watching the amazing Ter Stegen, who has obviously become a top goalkeeper. But what are your thoughts on Neto coming in and filling in?
He had 4 decent saves, 1 goal scored on him. Very serviceable. What I really worry about though is they are going. They're playing Ferenc Varos today, which should
Right.
probably be not a difficult match. But then they've got Real Madrid, Juventus, and then they've got Alves before Ter Stegen comes back. He comes back at the end of the month. Um, and then they've got Atletico about a month from now. So their schedule, they've got a lot of work ahead of them. And so without Ter Stegen, without Mtiti, and without Jordi Alba, that to me feels hard because that's a lot of good teams are playing against in the coming week. So you kind of have to hope that Lady Luck sides with them. Messi gets his full-on mojo back, and someone's going to have to contribute. And Griezmann's supposed to have been the guy, and he hasn't been the guy. And I don't know where that's going to happen, right? I feel like it's a heavy, heavy burden to put onto Fati at this point. Just got to give him another year or so just to kind of really get his legs. So
Right.
I see, I went out on a limb and said that Barca was going to win the league. And, they failed their first test. They lost against Getafe. And now they've got a murderer's row in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So we're going to get a pretty good idea of can they recover, particularly in Champions League. They're going to have their hands full. So we'll see.
And if I'm any other mid to bottom of the table club in La Liga, I'm looking at what Getafe did, and I mean that's what I'm doing against Barcelona. That's how you beat them. In this game, Getafe at one point they had a 56% pass completion rate. So for context, right about 85 is average for a game. So way below average, even for Getafe. That's shockingly poor. But it was just an approach that really prioritized high risk, high reward play. Mm-hmm. So, they were willing to send that long ball on the hopes that they could link up, get on the end of it, maybe try and force PK and Lenglet to defend in the wide areas where they not the best defenders. And in the end, I don't think that approach produced the goal. You know, they were able to get their penalty kick through other means, but what it did was it broke up any kind of rhythm Barcelona could hope to have. So any one turnover, they knew the ball was going long and they'd have to restart all over again. And when you look at the way Getafe defended, you know, they sent 4 players up in the attack to go chase down the ball. The other 6 players were very, very disciplined to keep their shape and deny Barcelona any quick re-entries. There were no counter-attacking opportunities for Barca. So I think that is a model for teams when they play Barcelona and Real Madrid. And, you know, if I'm Barcelona, yeah, I mean, my concern is definitely, you know, if teams are going to give us 72% possession, much. And if we do have that much, you know, how can we break down these low blocks? Going back to last year, Alex, like you said, that's not something they were comfortable doing.
Right.
Scott and Alex, I'd love to get your take on this. 63% of the attacks were in the middle, and 37 were on the right side, and 0 were on the left side. What's wrong with this picture here?
It's what we've come to understand about this Barcelona side, where they stuff down the middle. It's not the worst tactic. It's really not. That's not the problem. The problem is, like Scott was saying, is if that's your solution to breaking down a low block. Because in a low block, you typically have 5 defenders. That means there's 3 across the middle that have no problem interchanging and stepping hard because they have so much cover. It's like reducing your back 3 that's all the way wide to a very narrow back 3, which is what every center back wants. Less running, thank you. All I got to do is kick the ball out when the cross comes in. And by the way, if you're playing against Barcelona, the cross is not coming in because it's coming central. Maybe the stat of 0 on the left is also not great for Sergio Dest's second game on the left, but I don't think we should put that on him necessarily. But yeah, Barcelona last year had the least crosses in the league, opposite of a team like Sevilla. That's something you'd love to see them add in, just a little more element of surprise, where they can go down the middle. They're gonna cross early, instead of winning the ball back right away and having 10 passes and waiting for everyone to get behind the ball. One pass, then a chip over the top for, by the way, a guy like Ousmane Dembele, it's amazing to see him back out there, because for any football fan, not just for Barcelona fans, because he's had so many problems with injury. I don't think they're utilizing a guy like him well enough, or even a guy like Messi doesn't run as much anymore, but Coutinho, Griezmann, Trincao, these guys all want the ball at feet. So I don't know who on this team is necessarily stretching the space for this Barcelona side. The last person we saw do that was Neymar. Ansu Fati at times. We can't forget Ansu Fati at times does that as well. But it's so hard to have the ball against a low block and try to beat a guy 1v1. Because to beat a guy 1v1, you need space in behind that guy to beat. And if there's always cover, you're never going to beat him. It's going to have to be a shimmy, one of those quick Messi shimmies, or Fati at the beginning of the year and shoot. But you have to make sure that you get these sides unbalanced, not balanced. And when teams are balanced, that's where they really feel like they can take it to Barcelona with that terrible pass success rate of 58%. So, yeah, that's my opinion on that, Chris.
So, Scott, wouldn't you argue, or what's your take? I mean, 63% up the middle. They could kind of sort of make it work with Suarez there along with Messi. Even then it was starting to get a little rusty, right?
Right.
I'm a little shocked when I saw those numbers. I'm like, wait a minute, how can a top tier team rely so much on this? I mean, what do you think is going to have to happen?
I really think they need Messi to move into the middle so they can actually have two guys who can offer them a little bit of width. Messi he doesn't give them that presence on the wings that they need. And we haven't really seen, Sergio Roberto is going to be a right back. You're not going to get the attacking on the right-hand side that complements Messi. So that's another issue. But, when I look at this Barca side, it seems like every attack is either right down the middle, in which case, if you're sitting in the low block, you should hopefully have like a, 6v4 advantage right there in the middle where you can counter them. And to Alex's point, there's never a true 1v1. It's 1v2, 1v3. And then if that doesn't work, they drop to Messi. And when Messi gets the ball, he either looks to draw the foul close to the box where he can use his free kick ability, or he looks to play that far post cross. So it has become pretty predictable for Barcelona. And, so that's where if you're not going to use Dembele's pace, his willingness to run behind the line, you got to go with Fati. But if you're going to go with Fati on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, what are you doing on the right-hand side? Because right now, just Barcelona plays just in 2 channels or 3 channels. And it's just too easy for teams because and if you've got Griezmann in the game, send those crosses early because he can go on the line. You don't want him going up against a 6'2" center back, but if you play him 10 yards behind that line, maybe towards the penalty spot, that's when you give him a fighting chance. And that's very comparable to the way Atletico Madrid used him. So it's either counterattack or early crosses getting.
I'm actually really in favor of that idea of dropping Messi more to a traditional number 10 and just having him stay in that role. Because when Barcelona picks up the ball and wins it back when they're out of possession, he can be the immediate outlet right away. And his ability to pick a pass out on a dime from a deeper position in that number 10 role could be the key to unlocking more 1v1s, 2v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s higher up the field for guys like you're saying, Dembele, Fati, even Griezmann up top, which creates more imbalances. So I think it's worth trying. At times it's a lot of the center parts, 62% in the center, is because of Lionel Messi, because he drifts into that center, like you were saying, Scott. So maybe it's time for Barcelona to give him a different role, or at least try it out to see if that works. We'll have to wait and see. So our last game, the derby, the battle of Villarreal, Valencia. You guys called this last week, and there was no doubt about it. You said Villarreal was going to take this one, no problem. 2-1 score for Villarreal at the end of the day. Anything that surprised any of you two, or did it go, pretty much as planned for Villarreal?
That's about what I expected. So they're a very good side. I think when you look at the, maybe the 5th, 6th, and 7th place teams that can compete, or maybe at least put pressure on those top 4 for a Champions League spot, Villarreal's right in the mix. So they're a fun team to watch. And if you ever want to, especially as a coach or a player even, if you want to learn a little bit more about how you can use a side effectively with attacking rotations high up the pitch, this is a great side to watch. So, yeah, they're going to be very competitive this year. They can have consistent finishing and maintain some structure defensively. They're a side that can push for a top 4 finish. It's a big ask, but they've definitely got the talent and I think the fun tactical fluidity to do it.
Anything from you, Chris, on the side of Villarreal? You said Valencia was going to drop all the way to Segunda, so.
Well, if they're only going to have 3 shots on target, 37% possession, and play matches where there's a combination of 21 fouls in the game, 3 red cards, 1 red card to their defense that was on Villarreal at the very end. I mean, it's it was an ugly game, right? And it is what it is. I still think Valencia is going to have to answer a lot of questions, and I agree. Villarreal, could they be a Europa slot? Possibly, right? They're in the conversation. A lot of games to play, and we'll kind of see where things go.
All right, guys. So before we preview the only important game there is coming up in La Liga, El Clasico, I wanted to take a moment to just briefly discuss what we've started to hear, this idea of a European Premier League, European Super League. So essentially this would be almost like a Champions League style of a football league within Europe that would have teams play less games, but it would be the top 4, 5, or 6 teams from each of the big, the big 4, big 5, or 6, with a few other exceptions, I imagine, play against each other in this, Avengers Assemble steroid of a league. What do we think about this, guys?
I think it's inevitable. I mean, money talks, money walks, money, money, money. I mean, it already is. There is the haves and the have-nots, right? And that's what happens when you don't have a salary cap. So in La Liga, you have maybe 3 legit teams. Sevilla, 3.5, call it. You've got PSG. You've got the 5 or 6 Premier League teams. And in Serie A, maybe you've got Juve and the 2 big Milan teams, right? You want to add a little charm to it. You've got Atalanta, Napoli, and Roma. They're going to make things interesting. But let's call a spade. And I really think Project Big Picture, which was proposed by Man United and Liverpool, in many ways is a acknowledgement that the Super League already exists. And, it's dotted lines right now. And at some point it's going to go to straight lines because there's so much more money that the super clubs can make. And that's going to suck away from the domestic leagues. But I think the domestic leagues are probably going to put a salary cap on it and create a sustainable model where owners aren't spending 104% of revenues on player salaries. That model don't work unless you get an owner that is infatuated with the idea that we can become the next big team. So I don't know. I think we need to kind of acknowledge a spade as a spade, or we need to put a salary cap in there. I am a big fan of parity, and there have been 6 teams that have won the Premier League, 2 teams that have won La Liga, 1 team that has won in Italy for the last 9 years, right? And PSG hasn't been in that position. I'm tired of watching these top 5 guys basically play against speed bumps and wait for a banana slip, and that may be determined who is second place or Champions League or Europa.
So, as a football romantic, I really hate the idea of a Super League. I love that they have their domestic competitions. I love that there's the 100+ year history that ties into each competition. Player records against various opponents, league records. I love that. And you know what? The Champions League is enough for me. I don't need Real Madrid against Barcelona one week, Manchester United the next, Bayern. I'm okay waiting until March, April, May for those matchups. And you know what? The patience that requires, that actually makes it even more intense. If I have Real Madrid against a European superpower every single week, then every week is just another week. But if I have Real Madrid against Juventus in late April in the Champions League semifinals, that's special. That's something I want to see every single time. I mean, I will move my schedule to make sure I am free right in front of the TV to see that game. If that's every week, big deal.
Scott, do you get excited when Real Madrid plays Huesca or Valladolid. I mean, or Elche or Alaves. I mean, those are those are check the internet on your smartphone when you do something else games. And at least with the European games, that's something it may become more commonplace, but on any given Saturday or Sunday, Real Madrid can lose, and they're not going to lose against the four teams that I mentioned to you, largely because those there are one or two Real Madrid players that are already the entire payroll of those three or four clubs, right? Real Madrid's payroll is larger than all four of those clubs' payrolls combined. I mean, it's a farce. It's the Super League is already there. You're just not calling it there. And what's done it in, frankly, in La Liga was Franco's patronage, right? Barca's money, right? They got out ahead. While as yet all the other leagues, you've got Russian oligarchs, you've got Middle Eastern oligarchs, or you've got Americans oligarchs that are basically creating the Super League. The cat is already out of the bag.
We've just done an entire podcast on upsets in La Liga. I did not expect Cadiz to beat Real Madrid, but
And
Right,
I didn't either. But how many more times? How many more times? How many games did Real Madrid lose last year?
Chris, we've talked about this off air too, but so what do we? These are some great points. Both sides, both you guys are bringing up here. What do we say to a team like Leicester City who goes and wins the Premier League? If there is this Super League, if there was a Super League, they wouldn't have even have had that chance to have the greatest upset in football or sporting, in my opinion, history, because they did it consistently over what, 8 months? Like, that's ridiculous. Something like that cannot happen anymore. How do you have the small teams? Are they just going to dilute and the dreams are all done for those kids? They can't play anymore at a competitive level because the finances go out the window for all the smaller clubs. I would argue all these big clubs, make the leagues. They make the country more unified in terms of playing. I don't know if there's just a Super League, as you were saying, it's just dilute.
Okay, let me get this straight. You're saying
dilutes.
Barcelona is making the country more unified, even though they have a separate
In terms of playing,
going on.
because if I'm Huesca and I play the mighty Barcelona, who has Lionel Messi, and even if I'm Getafe, we play the mighty Barcelona, and one of my kids makes the Getafe youth team. He finally makes it on the first team. He's an 18-year-old. He makes that team, and they beat the mighty Barcelona. You're telling me that's not good for the community? That's not good for a smaller club? That's not good.
It's
That's
awesome,
a beautiful
Scott.
story.
I mean, it's awesome, Alex. But here's the thing: is that the 3 times that Real Madrid lost last season, there were 35 other times where they won and they spanked Getafe and everybody else.
True.
So it's like, why do you want to have the 1 in 10?
But that's why you have the
option?
Champions League. So for me, what does that mean? Does that mean the Champions League is done, right? The Champions League is the greatest accomplishment in soccer, apart from maybe the winning the World Cup. And some players argue the Champions League is even better than winning the World Cup. Although I think very few. But still,
What I don't
pinnacle.
what I don't like about the Champions League is you've got single elimination, potentially too early, right? Why can't they play 3 or 4 games
No chance.
or 5 matches, right?
No chance.
Why can't we have an extension of a season where we see Liverpool was the best team last year. The year before, they happened to be best informed during the Champions League, right? Those are why not have all of that, and why to me false hopes are so much more dangerous than saying, oh yeah, we can beat, oh look at Cadiz, they won the one time, so yeah, maybe 2 other teams do that against Real Madrid, and you've got all these chumps, right, that think that they can win. I don't want false hopes. I want a legit chance where Cadiz has got just as much money as all the other teams, right, in terms of a salary cap. And in any given season or year, they could win it all, right? And maybe that's the American in me, but I want everybody to have an equal chance to win. And right now, there are no equal chances in La Liga or EPL or Serie A or any top level of football at this point.
I mean, from my perspective, I want to preserve the domestic competitions, because of the history there, because of the significance of playing the villains.
And that can
That's what these
stay.
kids are. It's
And that can
part of the
stay.
narrative. You're playing the villain, trying to knock them off. If Real Madrid does not win this Champions League or this La Liga season, and they lose by 1 point, Cadiz can be like, "We did that. We knocked them off. We helped Barcelona or Atletico, Sevilla win the La Liga." But the other thing,
So we were the roadkill that helped the other champions beat this champion. That's the argument you're making for me.
Hey, even in Major League Baseball, no, actually, that's a bad example. There's no salary cap there. Even in basketball, the NBA, where there's a hard salary cap, you still have those teams that are notoriously always at the bottom. And that's just the way the league's going to be. Once you have a superstar in those leagues, they attract more superstars, and then you build a dynasty, and that dynasty sticks around for X number.
Okay, now you're losing me even more, Scott. All right, we've already lost Ronaldo in the league. We're going to lose Messi pretty soon, right? Remind me who the superstars are in La Liga anymore that aren't in the Premier League or at PSG, right?
So next year I'm thinking Holland for sure.
Who?
Mbappe and Holland. I mean,
okay. If you think Mbappe is going to come here, and maybe he will.
He will.
Let's hope he does, because I'm cheering for the league on it.
Already turned down the
But
PSG.
I got to tell you, the Manchester teams, they got a lot bigger budget. We're going to see what happens in that run. But I worry about La Liga. If you lose the superstars, what's going to happen, right? I worry about Serie A. If they lose Ronaldo, I mean, I love Lukaku. I got a crush on him, a soccer crush on him, but he can't carry the league by himself, right? And Zlatan, maybe a year or so, but he can't carry that league anymore. I feel like we're losing out. Let's get the Super League. Let's let those guys be who they are. And then let's keep those 100-year traditions and create some parity where it's going to be fun to watch the domestic leagues.
How many times has the EPL won the Premier League or the Champions League in the past decade?
Scott, I agree with you on that point, but let's have this conversation in 5 years, right? I think things are going to change because the Galactico model won't work anymore. You're going to have analytics and you're going to have money, right? And you can't just spend like drunken sailors like Barca and Real Madrid's model and Man U's model has been. That don't work anymore.
I agree, but this is where I think if they come up with some kind of a luxury tax like the NBA has, that does take some of that money from the bigger teams and funnel it down to the smaller teams. So you do have a little more parity, and I'm okay with that. If there are 3 or 4 teams who can make each season interesting, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Right. But if you're Real Madrid or Barcelona, do you want to put a salary cap on now? Because you are already making so much money hand over fist. There's no incentive for you to do that, right? But the Super League, if it's like, hey, we're going to 2x your income and you're going to play a third fewer games. Are you okay with that? What do you think the owners are going to say?
Oh, I have no doubt that the owners are totally on board with this. I wouldn't put the tradition of the game in their hands.
Exactly. I think that's the biggest point is financially, this might make the most sense for all the top dogs. And at the end of the day, those top dogs have a lot of influence, like you were saying, Chris. There's definitely some really great points and pros and cons on both sides. Maybe the solution is just to have Real Madrid and Barcelona play 28 games in a season against each other and battle it out and see who comes out on top. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. So let's preview the one pleasurable game that we have coming up. El Clasico, FC Barcelona against Real Madrid. guys, we've talked a lot about how the teams look in terms of their front three, with Casemiro being out. We got Messi. We got who's the superstar on Real Madrid right now? I'm not so sure. We got Zidane against Messi, maybe. But Ramos might be out, depending on what happens. We'll see there. But who do we favor here? I'm going with Barcelona.
I mean, naturally, I'm going Real Madrid. So, but there's a lot of uncertainty in this matchup. This one really could go either way. When they played back in March, I felt really good about Real Madrid's chances. I'm much less confident coming into this one. We haven't really seen either side have that fluidity that they had last season. And there's still just gaping holes in both lineups. I don't think either manager has found his ideal starting 11. So maybe that's just early season rotation to get them ready for this big burst of games with Champions League now in play. But yeah, lots of question marks in this matchup.
Yeah, I guess my take on this game is it's going to be a 2-1 outcome. I just don't know what the 2-1, who's going to have the 2 and who's going to have the 1, right? I don't, they're calling it pretty even. I know the sports books are calling the over under on 2.5. It's dead even either way. They don't have an opinion on it. And they've got actually Barcelona as a mild favorite. So yeah, that's interesting to me that they've got Barca as the favorite here. And I guess it's a home game for Barca is maybe that's what they're making the call. So sorry guys, we're gonna have to keep it a dead tie. All I know is going to be 2-1. I don't know who's going to win it. It's that close.
Based off what's happening right now in Champions League, Barcelona is up 3-1 currently in the 81st minute against Varos. It looks like it was Trincao, Coutinho, Ansu Fati, and Messi up top. If this game goes like it's supposed to go and with 10 minutes left, I actually think that's going to be the exact lineup that plays against Real Madrid. Coutinho playing more in that number 10 role with Messi as a false 9. Although I know, Scott, we spoke about Messi being as that number 10 role, completely and just staying there, not as a false 9. I do think Messi against Real Madrid, as a false 9 works better than as a false 9 against Getafe. Why? Because Real Madrid is not afraid of Barcelona, and they're not just going to sit back and do this crazy low block. There's going to be times where Messi drags out. I think it will be Militao and Varane, who have, Varane obviously has a lot of experience playing against him. And I think that will provide, a lot of space for Fati and Trincao, to stay isolated out wide and both to come inside. Is it going to be Nacho playing in that right back position? I personally hope so, based on his last game. He's going to have to be a stay-at-home defender, like you mentioned, not like he was in the past game, because going up against Fati 1v1 is no small task. My biggest question is who's in the midfield for Barcelona and who's in the midfield for Real Madrid. Kroos is for sure. I do think he'll end up playing Modric. Now, for me, who's that third midfielder for Real Madrid? And I do think for Barcelona, he's going to go with Frankie de Jong, that's for sure. Who's going to be that other one? Is it Pjanic because he just played in this Champions League game, or is it going to be Busquets? That is the big uncertainty for me. Scott, maybe you can shed some light there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you'll see Busquets in the starting lineup. They've got to have some kind of a rotation with both of those guys on the wrong side of 30. So, yeah, expect Busquets back in the starting lineup. For Real Madrid, I mean, if this past weekend taught us anything, it's that Casemiro has to be in the lineup. He has to be the first person on that team sheet. So I think Kroos works well with him in the midfield. And then, it's really just a matter of, what do they want to accomplish on that right side of the pitch? If Nacho does play, how do you get any kind of attacking threat from that right side. And so, maybe that's where Valverde comes onto into the starting lineup. Play him with maybe a guy like Rodrigo out top. I think that gives them that little bit of an edge on that right-hand side that's really been lacking so far this season. The other thing, Zidane could totally throw us for a loop and go 4-4-2 with the diamond midfield and, have Benzema and Jovic up top with Isco underneath. So he's shown a little bit of flexibility this season. Maybe that's where he's gone wrong a little bit, in testing the waters with these various formations, various combinations. Maybe that has taken away from the team's performance. But, then again, this early in the season, why not take a chance? So, yeah, I think for me, figuring out that right-hand side has to be the priority. Need a little bit of defensive security, but they also need something in the attack just from that right-hand side, because that's really so far this year.
Alex, are there any particular matchups, kind of individual matchups that you think we need to be paying attention to in the Clasico?
With Barcelona center backs as of late, it's always Benzema, Lenglet, and PK. Those are ones that I'm always excited to watch because I really respect Benzema as a number 9. I think he's like the complete number 9. He can do anything, so he's so hard to play against. I don't think PK and Lenglet are in great form. I think that's a big matchup to look out for. And I've already mentioned, obviously, the Varane-Messi one, although I don't think it's going to be more Varane-Messi. It might be Casemiro-Messi because of how much Messi, drags back. Honestly, usually it's Messi against everyone. He goes and gets his hacks from everyone. But Ansu Fati versus Nacho, if it is Nacho again, I think that's one that could change the game completely. Now, on the other end, if Rodrigo plays and he plays on the right against a guy like Sergio Dest, that's a really big test. That's like the battle of very quick, agile 1v1 players. I think that's really exciting to watch as well. And then finally, Sergio Roberto on that right back spot. Vinicius, right, Scott? I think it'll be Vinicius coming down that left-handed side, who's always such a handful. Roberto will be well aware of him. And, Vinicius does a good job always of going at players 1v1. It's just that final product that he still is just not allowing him to come to the next level. But, all over the pitch, there's just so many amazing matchups that, a lot of young players and obviously older players and analysts like us can learn from. So it's very exciting. We got a lot of awesome football to look out for. These are exciting times. European Super League might be coming up, right, Chris? So we'll see what happens. Any other points you guys want to make about the matchup?
No, I think the prevailing theme that I'm hearing is Messi, Messy, in all the leagues. There's just shortened preseason, injuries, COVID, just it's going to be really upside down. And that's going to make hopefully for a really enjoyable league watching and hopefully some enjoyable Champions League as well. So I'm actually really excited about this and that the wheels are off the bus a little bit, or at least one wheel for the Real Madrids and the Barças of the world. So then we kind of see where the new heroes come. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just so I actually meant to mention this earlier, but my player of the week in all this chaos, Alan Young for Getafe. Somehow he managed 8 fouls and stayed on the pitch. And not only that, he played the pass that set up the penalty kick. So Alan Young, player of the week, fantastic work, bud.
I'm going to talk about goat of the week, and it's just because this just happened. But PK getting a red card in this Champions League game, so he's not going to be featured against Juve. I don't know how an experienced center back lets that happen. But that's the sort of fray that's going to make this season so interesting, guys.
We'll have to take a look at that red card. Well, that wraps up today's episode. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Total Football Analysis La Liga podcast. A big thank you to Chris and Scott for your fantastic insights today. As always, we would like to thank Total Football Analysis Solutions. Go check the website, www.totalfootballanalysis.com. They are the world's largest open source soccer analyst community. See you next week, and hasta luego.